At 75 years old, just 4 weeks ago, I received an anonymous letter that not only shattered my entire world, but compelled me to deliver the harshest lesson imaginable to my son. What I uncovered about Alexander was utterly unforgivable, so heartbreaking that I had no choice but to take action. This is the tale of a father's most agonizing instruction to his 48-year-old son. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is, where you are now. Imagine getting an anonymous letter that unveils your son's deepest secret, pushing a father battling diabetes to confront the most brutal reality. This isn't merely a narrative. It's a stark encounter with the shattering repercussions of previous deeds, a teaching moment between father and son that will reshape all you believed about kinship. The envelope showed up on a Wednesday morning. No sender's address, filled with papers that would reveal my own flesh and blood had turned into my worst enemy. The contents of those sheets would drive me to the toughest choice a father could ever face, a choice that would tear our family apart eternally. Yet it was the sole path to show Alexander that certain disloyalties offer no redemption. It was an ordinary November morning when my life flipped upside down. I sat in my beloved armchair in the den, that tan leather seat Susan had gifted me for our 40th wedding anniversary, 6 years before she passed away. Sunlight filtered through the beige curtains she had picked out, casting warm designs on the oak floor I had laid myself when we purchased this home in 1980. All appeared routine, serene, much like every dawn since I stepped away from my building career 12 years back. My daily pattern was straightforward: dark coffee at 7 sharp, scanning the headlines, monitoring my glucose at 8, a basic meal, then a full day of minor home tasks and programs that occupied the vacant moments since Susan departed. But that morning, as I caught the usual clink of the postal carrier dropping items into the box, an urge pulled me up quicker than normal. Perhaps it was a gut feeling, or simply restlessness. Yet I headed to the entrance and opened the green steel mailbox that Alexander had set up for me 3 years prior. Amid the standard invoices and trivial flyers, there sat a plain envelope without a return label, addressed plainly to George Anderson in neat printed capitals. No postal code, no full road title, just my name and residence number. Whoever dispatched it knew my precise location, but aimed to stay hidden. I returned to the den with the stack, but my gaze lingered on that enigmatic envelope. Over 45 years in the building trade, I had honed an instinct for peril. When an issue loomed on a site, I sensed it in my core before spotting it visually. And right then, clutching that envelope, I experienced the identical foreboding that warned me of a beam ready to give way or a base at risk. I ripped it open cautiously, like diffusing an explosive. Within were multiple creased pages and a tiny flash drive. The initial page was a scripted note in the same precise print as the cover. Mr. Anderson. It started. I realize what follows will crush you, but as a parent, you merit the facts about your son, Alexander, and his spouse, Evelyn. For nearly a year, they have been methodically pilfering from you in manners no parent should suffer. The proof lies in the subsequent pages and on the enclosed drive. You have scant time before they enact their ultimate step. Kindly review your financial records at once, from someone who values fairness. My fingers trembled before I flipped to the next sheet. The primary proof was a duplicate of statements from my primary account at Central Bank. Marked in bright yellow were regular shifts of $1,500 to an unfamiliar account. These shifts traced back 10 months, precisely 3 weeks following Susan's burial. As I grappled with sorrow, learning to exist without the partner who shared 40 years with me, someone had begun steadily siphoning my savings. But that was merely the start. The following sheet displayed papers for a home loan valued at $300,000 against my residence. My home, which I had acquired and cleared entirely by 1988, was abruptly encumbered once more. The autograph on the forms mirrored mine flawlessly. Yet I was certain beyond doubt that I had never endorsed those sheets. Someone had replicated my handwriting with expert accuracy, examining each loop, each line, each quirk until they could mimic it impeccably. The third sheet truly began to dismantle my reality. It was a duplicate of health files from Mercy General Hospital, where Susan had endured her final 4 months combating liver cancer. The files indicated a sequence of therapies and drugs that were halted owing to inadequate coverage and limited household funds. Yet I vividly recalled handing Alexander $25,000 in currency expressly to handle any health costs the policy skipped. Where had those funds vanished? Why was my wife denied care I had funded? The fourth sheet resolved that query in a manner that turned my stomach. It was a duplicate of statements from a shared account under Alexander and Evelyn Anderson, displaying consistent additions that aligned perfectly with the times I provided Alexander cash for Susan's care. $25,000 in February, $18,000 in March, $14,000 in April. Every dollar I entrusted to my son to preserve my wife's existence had flowed into his private holdings. But what stunned me deepest were the entry notes. Deposit from Dad for health reserve. Transfer for Grandma's therapy funds. Deposit for kin medical crisis. Alexander had precisely labeled each pilferage as though he were a bookkeeper logging valid dealings. He had converted his mother's agony into a private income stream. The fifth sheet revealed how this cash had been squandered. A Hawaiian getaway in February, a fresh Mercedes in March, initial payment for a high-end suburban villa in April, while Susan faded in a clinic cot, pleading for relief drugs she assumed we lacked means for. Alexander and Evelyn reveled like tycoons with the funds intended to rescue her. Yet more sheets awaited, each exposing a fresh stratum of treachery. The sixth sheet held copies of message exchanges between Alexander and Evelyn from Susan's clinic stay. The old guy will fork over whatever we demand, Alexander typed. He's so eager to rescue her. He never probes where the cash heads. Evelyn's reply was harsher still. Ideal. The more drawn out her passing, the extra we can extract from him. My sight hazed as I scanned those texts. These were the folks I relied on utmost, debating my wife's demise like a venture prospect. They weren't solely thieving my funds. They were intentionally extending Susan's torment to boost their gains. The seventh sheet displayed yet more crushing messages traded the week Susan perished. At last, Evelyn penned, now we can cease feigning interest in her health visits. Alexander's answer. And top of all, the old guy will be so down he'll ignore money matters for ages. It's our shot to grab all we can. It became unbearable to proceed. I grasped the flash drive with unsteady hands and headed to the machine Alexander had assisted me in configuring the year before. Ironic that he had pushed so hard for me to gain online access, likely to ease his upcoming swindles. I plugged in the gadget and discovered scores of sound clips, footage, and files. The initial sound clip was a call between Alexander and a person he termed Dr. Ramirez. It required a bit to grasp it wasn't an actual physician, but some sort of fiscal advisor focused on senior scams. The key, Dr. Ramirez's tone stated, is to proceed step by step. Seniors like your dad overlook minor shifts. $1,500 monthly is minor enough to slip by, but substantial enough to matter. What of the loan? Alexander inquired. Save that for when he's weaker. Diabetes is ideal since it'll deteriorate gradually. When he requires heavier health aid, you can frame the loan as vital for care. He'll endorse anything if you claim it's to preserve his life. The chill in my son's tone was alien. This wasn't the lad I nurtured, whom I instructed to pedal a cycle, whom I escorted to football matches on Saturdays. This was the sound of a scheming hunter methodically plotting his father's economic ruin. The second sound clip was graver. It was a capture of Alexander chatting with Evelyn in my own home's cooking area, evidently recorded during one of their stops after Susan's burial. "He's so pitiful now." Alexander chuckled. Yesterday he wept viewing her photos. It's nearly tragic how simple it is to sway him. Evelyn's giggles resounded behind. "How much longer do you figure he'll last?" she queried. "Guys his age, particularly with diabetes, seldom surpass 80, another 3 years, perhaps 4. Ample time to siphon all he owns and then claim the remainder." I halted the playback. I couldn't endure more. My son was essentially anticipating my demise, tallying how much span remained to plunder me before I expired naturally. They had reduced my existence to a monetary timer, but I realized I must absorb all if I sought to grasp the betrayal's full scope. The third sound clip was a dialogue between Alexander and a guy he named Ricky. The talk disclosed that Alexander wasn't merely pilfering from me, but entangled in a broader senior scam ring. "Your father-in-law was simple," Ricky remarked. "We extracted 50,000 before kin noticed. Your dad appears even riper." "He's ideal," Alexander responded. "Secluded since my mom passed. Trusts me utterly, and holds far more wealth than he lets on." The insight struck like a bolt. Alexander wasn't just an avaricious offspring robbing his parent. He was linked to a crime syndicate that targeted frail seniors. I wasn't his initial prey. I was merely the most lucrative. The fourth sound clip was taped the prior week, merely 12 days back. It was Alexander discussing with Evelyn about their scheme's endgame. "The upscale condo is nearly set," he stated. "I've located the ideal care facility for him. It's budget, run down, but will sustain him long enough for us to transfer the home title. Once we possess the asset, we can offload it and gather enough to relocate to California." "What if he fights it?" Evelyn asked. "He won't. I'll claim it's brief, just during recovery from a wellness setback. Diabetes provides plenty of handy pretexts. And once in the facility, it'll be straightforward to persuade him to sign papers. Seniors in homes endorse whatever their handlers present." The facility they selected was infamously recognized in the town for carelessness and abuse. 4 years prior, it faced scrutiny for scores of dubious fatalities. It was essentially a spot where folks were dispatched to perish, and Alexander had picked that venue expressly for me. I kept absorbing the captures, each unveiling novel depths of ruthlessness and disloyalty. There were captures of Alexander mocking how I beamed with thanks whenever he dropped by. There was Evelyn performing vicious mocks of my tone when I voiced money worries. There were thorough talks on how they aimed to expend my legacy, including a sailboat, a lakeside cabin, and at last shedding any kin duties. But the most crushing capture was at the list's close. It was a dialogue between Alexander and Evelyn taped in their residence, seemingly by a concealed gadget from whoever probed them. In the capture, they frankly debated Susan. "Do you reckon she suspected Evelyn inquired about the funds?" "Likely. She was ever sharper than him. But what could she do? She was fading. She lacked the vigor to challenge anyone. What if she had informed him it wouldn't count? Even if she had, he would never accept it. The old guy worships me. Always has. I could have ended her myself, and he would have devised a reason to pardon me." The phrases sliced my core like blades. Not only had they swiped Susan's care funds, but they realized she knew. My wife had perished, aware her nurtured and cherished son opted for cash over her survival, and she had borne that anguish to her tomb to shield me. I shut down the machine and lingered in quiet for nearly 90 minutes, striving to digest the betrayal's scale. For 48 years, I had fostered a son who evolved into my fiercest foe. For 3 years since Susan's passing, I had dwelled in delusion, thinking Alexander visited from affection, when truly he was carrying out a complex plot to wreck me financially and discard me in a place where I would expire solitary and forsaken. But maybe the most shattering aspect was comprehending that Susan had died knowing the facts. She had spent her concluding days conscious that the son she adored had betrayed her in the most savage fashion possible, and she had elected to perish quietly to spare me this torment. I grabbed the telephone and dialed the bank. The agent verified my direst fears. There were routine monthly shifts of $1,500 from my holdings to an account titled Anderson Kin Trust. When I probed the loan, she notified me I had endorsed the papers 4 months back in person at the branch with 2 observers. But I knew I had never visited that day. Alexander had posed as me, likely via false credentials. "Would you wish to contest these dealings?" the agent queried. "Not immediately," I answered. I must probe further before pursuing legal steps. It was accurate. Prior to facing Alexander, I required to wholly grasp the plot's breadth and identify who had forwarded that proof. Someone with entry to highly intimate details was aiding me, and I guessed that individual might possess even more vital data. I devoted the following 4 days scrupulously examining every file, every capture, every shred of proof. I crafted a precise chronology of the thefts, charting each bank shift, each faked paper, each falsehood uttered. The emerging pattern was alarming in its precision. Alexander hadn't merely resolved to rob me on impulse. He had invested years scheming and implementing a sophisticated plan of senior fiscal mistreatment. The proof indicated the scheme commenced while Susan still lived. Alexander had begun counterfeiting minor papers nearly 3 years before her demise, testing his skill to copy my autograph and spot weaknesses in my fiscal setup. He had utilized Susan's ailment as a chance to refine his scam methods, treating his mother's torment as a testing ground for future offenses. On the 5th day, I resolved it was time to uncover who had dispatched the proof. I rescanned the initial note seeking hints to the sender's persona. The line, "A person who values fairness," sparked thought. Who would hold access to such private data? Who could capture confidential chats between Alexander and Evelyn? Who would possess motives to desire I learn the truth? The revelation arrived from an unforeseen origin. Friday morning, I got a ring from an unknown digit. "Mr. Anderson," uttered a woman's voice. "I'm Detective Lisa Wong, Chicago Police Department. Did you obtain an unnamed parcel this week?" My pulse quickened. Yes, I did. Were you the sender? Not precisely. But my probe yielded this proof. May I see you today? There's far more you ought to learn. We convened at a central cafe 2 hours on. Detective Wong was an Asian lady in her 40s with a grave look and eyes that had witnessed much human deceit. She flashed a badge and took a seat opposite with a bulky dossier. "Mr. Anderson," she commenced, "your son has faced scrutiny for 8 months in a wider crackdown on senior scams. He's not a lone offender. He's tied to a structured group that has siphoned millions from seniors across Illinois." I felt as if struck in the gut. A structured group, yes, headed by a fellow called Richard Gomez, known as Ricky in the captures you heard. They boast at least 25 agents like your son, each tasked with spotting and exploiting frail seniors in their circles or neighborhoods. Detective Wong unfolded the dossier and displayed images of over 15 individuals, all aged 30 to 50. All these share a trait. They methodically pilfered from aged kin using identical tactics your son applied to you. One image jarred me especially. It was Evelyn, but in an older shot with altered hair and beside an aged gentleman I didn't know. "Who is this gentleman?" I asked. "Her prior father-in-law, George Patterson, 76 years old." Evelyn utterly depleted his reserves via a plot nearly matching the one she and your son wielded against you. George perished 4 years back solitary in a low-cost care home after Evelyn persuaded the kin he suffered dementia and required confinement. The awareness washed over me like ice. Evelyn wasn't merely a covetous spouse who swayed my son. She was a seasoned hunter who focused on wedding men from affluent clans to access aged heads. Alexander hadn't been her initial spouse. He was just the newest in a chain of strategic unions to enable senior theft. "Evelyn has executed this before," I queried, my voice scarcely audible. "4 times we've documented, always the same routine. Encounters a youthful man from a prosperous clan, weds swiftly, earns the aged head's reliance, then sways the spouse to join in ever more complex scam plots. When the targets perish or are fully drained, she separates and advances to the next clan." Detective Wong presented more papers. Wedding records showing Evelyn had wed 4 varied men in the past 12 years. Law enforcement logs displaying senior mistreatment probes in 4 distinct states. Clinic files of 5 aged men who expired under questionable conditions after their finances were exhausted by Evelyn and her transient spouses. "Your son isn't a shrewd offender who devised this solo," Detective Wong clarified. "He's a casualty of Evelyn's sway, who then turned eager partner upon seeing the cash haul. Evelyn enlisted him deliberately because your clan matched her prey profile exactly. A freshly widowed aged head with ample fiscal assets and a son bearing his own money woes." This clarified so much. Alexander had perpetually faced money troubles, even with a solid role in municipal management. He had separated 3 years before encountering Evelyn, and support payments and asset splits had left him almost insolvent. When Evelyn entered his world, providing not only romantic company, but also fixes for his fiscal binds, he must have viewed her as deliverance. "How did you unearth all this?" I inquired. George Patterson had a granddaughter who never bought the abrupt dementia tale. She engaged a private sleuth who exposed the scams. When George passed, she pressed charges against Evelyn. In our probe of her matter, we spotted the behavior pattern and began monitoring other potential targets. Detective Wong elaborated that they had surveilled Alexander and Evelyn for months, amassing proof for a national case of senior scam plotting. The captures I heard were obtained via monitoring tools placed in their flat under judicial mandate. "Why not reach me sooner?" I asked. "Why permit this to drag for so long?" "Because we required sufficient proof for sure verdicts. Senior scams are notoriously tough to pursue since targets often withhold cooperation or pass before hearings. We needed undeniable evidence of offense plotting, and now you possess it nearly. But there's an issue. Your son and Evelyn sense they're under watch. Someone tipped them, likely an insider from the group nabbed lately. They're set to vanish with the pilfered funds, including your home's loan worth." Detective Wong showed fresher call intercepts. Alexander and Evelyn aimed to bolt to Canada the following week, hauling over $400,000 swiped from me and other seniors. Once in Canada, extradition or fund recovery would prove nearly impossible. "What do you require from me?" I asked. "We need you to face them as we capture it. We need a full admission on tape for court use. With that, we can nab them pre-flight and shatter the whole ring." The idea was hazardous and emotionally wrecking. Detective Wong desired me to feign accidental fraud discovery and confront Alexander and Evelyn at a kin gathering while national operatives secretly taped all. It would rank among my life's toughest talks, compelling me to meet my son's gaze as he deceived me, aware each phrase would aid in jailing him. What if he denies I asked? He won't. Types like your son always spill when hit with solid proof. Their pride won't let them concede defeat by someone they deemed lesser. Detective Wong nailed Alexander's mindset. From youth, he had a driven urge to flaunt his superior smarts. When nabbed for misdeeds at school or home, he would always detail his scheme's intricacy, as if clever design excused poor conduct. How much time to choose, I asked. Until Tuesday. That's their final transfer and vanish day. Post that. Too late. I agonized the whole weekend over the call. On one side, Alexander was my son, the sole child Susan and I conceived after years striving. On the other, he had morphed into a hunter who not only thieved from me but aided his mother's anguished end and planned to ditch me in a spot to perish lone. Monday evening, I decided. I rang Detective Wong. I'll proceed, but I demand they endure full repercussions. No bargains, no lenient terms. I want them to atone for each cent thieved and each existence ruined. I fully grasp, Mr. Anderson, and I assure we'll strive for the harshest penalties feasible. Detective Wong outlined the scheme thoroughly. Tuesday dawn, I'd call Alexander and request him and Evelyn for a vital chat on my future. National operatives would station subtly around my residence. Top-notch capture gear would install in my den. I'd confront Alexander with partial proof, letting him attempt further sway before unveiling full knowledge. Crucially, Detective Wong stressed, remain composed, regardless of his words, his guilt ploys or pity bids. Recall his utterances will shield other clans from your ordeal. Tuesday dawn at precisely 9. I placed the call that altered all. Alexander picked up on the third tone, his voice laced with that phony worry I now saw as plotted control. Dad, how's it going? I was pondering a drop-by today. Alexander, I need to discuss something crucial with you and Evelyn. Can you head over this morning? A faint hesitation. Sure. Dad, all good. You seem tense. I'm okay. Just need to cover some money issues. Time to plan my ahead more wisely. Absolutely. Dad, happy to assist. Will arrive in 90 minutes. After disconnecting, I paced the home for 60 minutes, prepping mentally for my life's toughest clash. Detective Wong and her crew had placed nearly unseen lenses and mics across the den. National operatives stationed in a vehicle on the block and adjacent homes whose owners consented to aid the probe. At 11, I heard Alexander's familiar Toyota Camry pull into the drive. I inhaled deeply and settled in the armchair where I had scanned the unnamed note a week prior. Soon, I'd confirm if my son retained any decency, or if he had wholly become the beast the proof implied. Alexander entered first, sporting that known grin that once comforted me, but now nauseated me. Evelyn trailed, toting a dossier of papers I suspected held more bogus forms for my endorsement. Dad, you appear well, Alexander remarked, embracing me with seeming true warmth. How's the feeling managing the diabetes okay? I'm all right. Alexander, please take a seat. Evelyn, you as well. They positioned on the sofa facing me. Evelyn with her dossier neatly aside. Alexander with that attentive, respectful face he donned when expecting gain from me. So, what's on your mind? Alexander inquired. I drew a breath. It was go time. Alexander, last week I got some bank papers that puzzled me. There appear to be steady shifts from my holdings I don't recall okaying. A spark of alarm in Alexander's gaze, swiftly masked by that sham fatherly care. What shifts? Dad, perhaps auto pays you overlooked. 1,500 monthly to an account named Anderson Kin Trust. Know anything? Alexander glanced fast at Evelyn. Oh, Dad. Recall we chatted post-Mom's burial. You wanted a kin reserve for health crises if you needed advanced aid later. Such a fluid fib, so persuasive, voiced with such assurance that briefly I nearly bought it, if I hadn't absorbed the captures of him mocking my easy sway. I might have taken his word. I said that I queried, faking bewilderment. I don't recall any reserve. Dad, Evelyn interjected, her tone taking that belittling pitch used for seniors deemed inept. You were quite rattled after Grandma Susan's passing. You took several wise money steps, but perhaps stress blurred some memories. Maybe so, I conceded, opting to extend more line for their noose, and there are papers on a loan against my home. That a joint choice too. Now, alarm in Alexander's gaze tougher to conceal. Lone Dad, perhaps mixing files. Your home's been clear for years. I rose and approached the desk, holding some proof Detective Wong supplied. Let me display the papers I got, returning with them. I noted Alexander and Evelyn whispering urgently. Alexander forced a grin as I neared. Dad, before viewing these. Evelyn and I wished to discuss another matter. We believe perhaps time to ponder relocating where you get more tailored aid. Tailored aid, a senior living spot, Evelyn clarified. Opening her dossier, we've scouted several top choices with round-the-clock nurses, group events, and full health support. She displayed glossy pamphlets of places resembling premium retreats, but from herd captures, I knew these weren't their true picks for me. Mere lure to gain my nod on the idea. This seems pricey, I noted. How to fund such, well, Alexander stated. That's why the kin reserve. And if needed, we could leverage your home's worth for a bigger advance. There it lay. They guided me precisely as Detective Wong foresaw, urging voluntary agreement to plots already done sans my awareness. Leverage my home. But I thought it clear. It is. Alexander rushed. But lenders permit using clear homes as security for advances, especially for urgent health aid. And you think I need urgent health aid? Alexander and Evelyn swapped looks. It was Evelyn speaking. Grandpa George, we're concerned. Lately, you seem muddled on finances, forgetting talks, struggling with key choices recalled. It was flawless control. They depicted me as mentally unfit to warrant seizing my money reins, just as with prior targets, and done with such bogus earnestness, such seeming fret that I saw how other seniors succumbed. Maybe right, I said, feigning thought. But pre any choices, I'd like clearer grasp on these shifts and loan. I presented Alexander the loan papers. Observing his face as he read, I saw his mind whirl, seeking a soothing fib sans guilt admission. Dad, he uttered at last. I think I get it. You must have endorsed these when stressed and forgot. Maybe we hit the bank jointly to sort. Good plan. I agreed. But one puzzle. The autograph matches mine exactly, but I'm dead sure I never visited to sign. The ensuing quiet crackled. Alexander eyed the papers like he could will them gone. Evelyn had dropped all smiles. Dad, Alexander said warily, memory's tricky, especially post-traumas like Mom's passing. Maybe you signed and forgot. Or maybe, I stated, a odd serenity overtaking. Someone faked my autograph. The words detonated in the space. Alexander blanched visibly. Evelyn started bundling her papers anxiously. Dad, why say that Alexander asked? Voice pitched higher. Who would? I don't know. Alexander. Do you? Another dense quiet. I saw Alexander weigh paths, deciding lie persistence or tactic shift. Dad, he said finally, I think paranoia creeping. Maybe truly ponder those senior spots. You're evidently confused and bit frightened. It was the ultimate affront. After methodically robbing me, after aiding his mother's anguished demise, he dared imply I was the issue, that my valid fraud worry proved mental lapse. Alexander, I said, voice strengthening. I got an unnamed note last week with detailed fraud info. The writer knew family money details only intimates could. This time Evelyn reacted first. An unnamed note. Grandpa, seniors get mail cons constantly. Likely someone scaring for your data. Maybe, I said. But the note had real statements, real legal papers, and sound captures that rang true. Alexander rose sharply. Sound captures, Dad. Your scam victim clearly. Need police now. Good idea, I said, grabbing my phone. Why not call them wait? Evelyn rushed. Maybe inspect materials closer first. If fakes, no waste police time. The capture's intrigue, I continued, ignoring. One's a chat between two plotting to drain a senior's funds while grieving and frail. Alexander sank slowly, legs weakening. What chat? The type where two mock how easy to sway a pitiful old man who endorses anything presented. The quiet, now total. Alexander and Evelyn eyed each other like trapped beasts. I saw options dwindling fast. Dad, Alexander said, voice desperate now. If someone's truly scamming you, we'll aid, find, and charge them. But trust us. Trust you, I echoed slowly. Like trusted when you said Mom's treatment cash went to drugs. Alexander paled like chalk. This was data he I'd hold. Like trusted when you claimed managing my money to shield from cons. Dad, I can clarify. Like trusted when you wept at your mom's burial, making all think you grieved. Please, Dad, let me clarify. The most intriguing capture, I proceeded, decades of hurt and treachery voicing, is one where two discuss how a senior woman's cancer death lets them drop feigning care for her treatments. Evelyn began weeping, but not remorse tears. Tears of one caught facing fallout. And there's a capture where those two plot putting that woman's dad in a cheap, awful care home where he'll perish alone as they sell his home and head to California. Alexander trembled visibly now. Dad, that's not I never. There are captures of you mocking how I beamed thanks on visits. There are captures of Evelyn mimicking my voice on money worries. There are detailed talks on spending my legacy. I rose and approached the window, gazing the street where I knew operatives waited. But the capture that wounded deepest was one where you two debate if Susan knew you thieved her treatment funds. I turned to meet Alexander's gaze. And you said no matter if she knew since she was dying, and I'd never believe her anyway. Alexander tried speaking but uttered only garbles. The proof's weight had smashed his lie capacity. You said I worshipped you, so I'd pardon even if you ended her yourself. Those words shattered something core in Alexander. He slumped on the sofa, shoulders heaving with deep soul sobs. Dad, he managed. I can explain all. That's not how it began. Evelyn showed me smart investments with your funds. Stop, I said firmly. Don't fault Evelyn. You're a 48-year-old grown man. You chose to thieve from your dying mom, chose to fake my autograph, chose to plot ditching me in a horrid spot. Your choices. Evelyn tried a final, desperate gambit. Grandpa George, Alexander aimed to shield you. He knew you muddled and bad folks could exploit. Quiet. Evelyn, I said with surprising chill, I know who you are. Know about George Patterson. Know your other spouses. Know you're a pro-hunter wedding men for access to family seniors. Evelyn shed all pretense. Her face turned colder. Plotting. And I know, I continued. You and Alexander plan fleeing to Canada next week with over 400,000 thieved from me and others. Now both stared like I was spectral. They clearly puzzled how I knew escape plans. How do you, Alexander started. How do I know? Because for 8 months you've faced national probe for senior scam plotting. Every chat, every shift, every faked paper taped by national operatives. Alexander and Evelyn eyed each other in utter dread, realizing discovery, not just by me but national crime probe, was crushing. And currently, I continued, this chat is taped by national operatives around this home awaiting full admission before warrants. Evelyn rose to flee, but Alexander restrained her. No, he said feebly, nowhere to flee. I resat in my armchair, feeling odd calm. After a week of torment, rage, and scheming, truth moment arrived. Alexander, I said serenely, you have one shot to do right first in years. Confess fully, aid authorities shatter your crime ring, and perhaps find some salvation. Alexander stared floor, hands quaking. Dad, sorry for all. Started small, few shifts for urgent debts, then spiraled. No, I cut in. No half facts. If want forgiveness, any rebuild chance. Tell full truth. All. Alexander inhaled deep, like cliff jumper. Full truth is, I wed Evelyn knowing her skill in handling tough family money spots. Continue. She showed how other clans fixed issues with stubborn seniors refusing finance aid. She said sometimes hard calls protect loved ones, and you bought that. Alexander paused. I wanted to. Had massive divorce debts. When Evelyn showed your idle funds not yielding enough. Seemed wasteful. So you felt entitled to my funds. Didn't start so. Evelyn said borrow against your asset. Smart invests. Repay with gain. You'd never know. But then shifted. Alexander nodded wretchedly. When Mom sickened, suddenly chanced to speed, Evelyn said funds on failing treatments better for long-term family invests. You truly thought better let your mom perish in pain to invest her drug funds. I didn't see it then. Evelyn convinced Mom dying anyway. More funds just extend torment. It was the most shattering admission. Alexander hadn't just thieved funds. He consciously let his mom die in agony, deeming funds useful elsewhere. And post her death, after she passed, I saw available funds. You so down, ignored finances. Seemed simple to thieve from grieving dad. Yes, the admission's starkness more shattering than any detail. Alexander had shrunk our kin bond to crime chance. I became mere easy mark. And care home plans Evelyn said better for you. Safer with pro-aid. The home you picked probed for negligence deaths. Alexander wept anew. Didn't know. Evelyn handled details. You didn't know 'cause didn't care to check. More keen on selling my home. California move. Yes. And you believed I'd die there unknowing. I hoped you'd never learn. Hoped you'd think good care. Family handling finances well. It was the last fib. Even now, with proof crushing, Alexander still posed as caring for my welfare. Alexander, I said, in your whole admission, no mention regretting pain to your mom or me, only regret caught. Alexander eyed me with swollen, tear eyes. Dad, regret all. Every choice lasts 3 years. You regret outcomes. I amended. Not deeds. If undiscovered. You'd van me to that horrid spot now. No, Dad, not true. It is. Alexander, we both know. Then, cars halted outside. Detective Wong said they'd act post-full taped admission. Alexander and Evelyn heard too. Evelyn tried backdoor run, but Alexander halted her again. Useless, he said. Over. The front opened. Detective Wong entered, trailed by 5 national operatives in vests, Alexander Anderson and Evelyn Anderson, arrested for plotting senior scam, paper faking, fund washing, and sundry national offenses. They recited rights while cuffing Alexander and Evelyn. I stayed seated in my armchair, watching my son hauled like common crook. Part wanted to yell, weep, or rush for final embrace, but most felt deep sorrow and justice sense at last. Mr. Anderson. Detective Wong said post others departed with Alexander and Evelyn. I know this excruciating. We offer support if need talk. Thanks, I replied, but think I'm okay. For first time in months. I know my stance. Detective Wong gave a card. May need testify. Questions on asset recovery. My office will contact. After she exited, I sat lone in den long. Home quieter than weeks. No more crushing secret weight. No constant fret of theft, unknowing by whom or how. Just quiet. And first time, peaceful quiet. I rose and window gazed. Street where neighbors resumed normal's post-police thrill. Kids' yard played. Senior pairs dog walked. Life persisted, heedless of closed-door dramas. I thought Susan, and first since her passing, could recall her son's betrayal taint, could recall her grin, her awful puns, her over-sugaring my coffee, could recall the lady pre-illness, pre-treachery, pre-complications. She'd be crushed knowing Alexander's turn, but proud my handling. Susan ever believed right action, even hard, specially hard. In ensuing months, legal unfolded as Detective Wong predicted. Alexander's taped admission, plus months probe proof, yielded airtight case. Other ring members nabbed. More targets testified. Scheme proved vaster, crueler than imagined. Evelyn got 15 years federal lockup. Her prior crimes history and victim enlist led. Judge deemed her society threat. She showed no remorse trial long, claiming actions savvy business in cutthroat economy. Alexander got 18 years. His term longer 'cause judge saw direct kin betrayal as specially vile. When son thieves from own parents, judge said sentencing attacks civilized society's base. Trial through. Alexander tried eye contact, prison letters, third-party calls. I rebuffed all. Detective Wong warned typical manipulator pattern. Even post-nab, they persist victim sway via guilt, pity, change vows. Vital recall, she said. Types like your son don't core change. May hide predator better, but exploit frail tendency lingers. I reclaimed about $250,000 via sale of assets Alexander and Evelyn bought with thieved funds. Rest spent or shifted to untraceable accounts. But funds never core. Core was ensuring consequence-facing and senior protection. 7 months post-trial. I got note from George Patterson, Jr., son of Evelyn prior target. He thanked Justice Aid for his kin. Informed civil suit against Evelyn for dad harms. My testify willingness spurred other clans justice seek. Your son may have done awful, George Jr. wrote, but you did brave, vital, saved other clans from our ordeal. Today, 3 years on, I lead simpler, calmer life, sold big home, moved small flat in genuine, reputable senior community. I volunteer aiding other seniors spot, report fiscal scams, Each tale reminds I wasn't sold, dad forced, choose blind love or self-guard. Sometimes evenings on balcony reading or sunset watching, I ponder Alexander. Not anger or hate, but deep sorrow for potential. We raised smart, schooled son Abel great. Somewhere, he chose hurt over help with talents. I still get prison notes from him, though unread now. Detective Wong said normal. Family exploit crooks often years try victim reconnect. Not true love, but 'cause can't accept control loss, forgiveness complex. Some say as Christian, should forgive son. Others say as dad, always open reconciliation door. But learned true forgiveness, not permit continued hurt, means release anger, advance, but not necessarily readmit. I've forgiven Alexander in no anger or revenge sense, but no life readmit, 'cause know his types don't core change. Just better hide true. Key lesson learned is sometimes good. Dad means hardest dad act. Let child face full choice fallout, even if means eternal loss. Susan buried in Oakwood Cemetery under maple she adored. I visit weekly, and now talk sans betrayal pain tainting memories. Tell her new life, helped folks. Peace post chaos found. And sometimes wind rustles maple leaves. Almost hear her say, right done. That shielding other seniors from our trial worth any sacrifice. That some crossed lines can't uncross. This my tale. Tales of dad who had destroyed son to save dignity. Shield other clans. Life's hardest call. But no regret, 'cause now know integrity tops funds. Justice tops false calm. And sometimes, greatest dad love show is refuse let son stay monster. If you're senior reading, no not alone. If suspect close one fiscal exploits, seek aid. Resources exist. Folks care. Justice possible. And if son or daughter caring senior parents, recall true care means protect, honor, not exploit, manipulate. Senior trust, precious gift, never betray. Life taught family, not just blood, about love, respect, loyalty, mutual shield. When those vanish, what remains may share surname, but no longer true family. And sometimes to guard world's remaining good. Courage say no to should be closest, but chose greatest threats. That my choice. Not easy, but right. And I'll live with that surety for remaining time. Knowing did what Susan would, what any character person would facing such deep treachery. Hardest truth simple. Some choose monster, even raised by angels. And when happens, angels must courage do right. If enjoyed this tale, please tap like, subscribe to Revenge with Thomas. And remember comment where watching from. Love hearing global viewers. Recall, sometimes hardest lessons most vital teach, even heartbreaking.